Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Rantanen, co-founder of the Tribal Broadband Bootcamps. This webinar is a part of our Tribal Broadband Bootcamp virtual series, where we look at different ways Indigenous communities organize and operate their own networks. We focus on how these networks approach the business side of broadband, how they are structured, how services are priced, and how to plan for long-term sustainability. These topics are perfect for virtual learning, while our hands-on skills are covered at the Tribal Broadband Bootcamps themselves. A recording of today's session will be posted for everyone to access. This series is sponsored by Waskawiwin. Waskawiwin provides training and education to support and maintain high-speed networks for Indigenous communities. It also serves as a governing body that offers fiscal organization, fundraising, and administrative support for this work. Today's session focuses on tribal partnerships with third parties. Before we begin, a quick framework for the conversation. When we say partnership today, we mean a long-term operational partnership. This is not just a contract to manage a single fiber build, but we will be talking about ongoing collaborations and consultants, contractors, or other external partners that help tribes build, operate, and sustain and expand their networks over time. Our panelists bring real-world experience and lessons learned. Joining us today are Allison Mitchell, Jennifer Kempio, Dan Doyle, and Tim Malone. I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves with their name, title, tribe, or organization, and the goal of their partnership. Let's start with Allison.
Sego, everybody. Allison Mitchell. I'm the general manager of Mohawk Networks. We are a tribally owned enterprise owned by the St. Regis Mohawk tribe. We are responsible for the infrastructure and the community in our Mohawk territory of Akwesasne. Akwesasne is in northern New York. We are straddled by the U.S. and the Canadian border, which runs directly through the middle of our territory. So our community is truly a border territory with its own challenges and certainly have our own opportunities to be able to advance how we connect our entire community. Appreciate everybody's participation today, and especially I'd like to be able to recognize our joint venture partner with Aecon Industries and my colleague Jennifer Campo.
Jennifer.
Hi, Ani Buju, Jennifer Campo. I'm the Vice President of Indigenous Relations at Aecon Construction Group. I'm also Anishinaabe. Very nice to be here with you all.
Thank you very much. And let's switch over to Dan Doyle.
Hi, my name is Dan Doyle. I am the CEO of Sioux Tribe Enterprise Operations. And what that is I oversee all Sioux Tribe enterprises, commercial businesses, and economic development that is non-gaming. Gaming is a sector in its own enterprise vertical. One of those enterprises will be our broadband network when complete, as we are operating it as an enterprise model. So I see a multitude of businesses I oversee. I'm a Sioux Tribe member as well. I'm very happy to be here today. So thank you for the invite and look forward to the discussion.
Great, thanks. And let's switch over to Tim.
You're muted, Tim.
You're muted. Nope, double click. There you go.
Yeah, I'm Tim Malone, CEO for Cherry Capital Communications. We are a regional telephone company. I am not a member of the Sioux Tribe, but we've entered into a long-term commitment where we, being open access, we have multiple owner networks and we manage it for them as an ISP.
Very good. So I will start with the questions. So our opening question, can you please outline the nature of your partnerships, including at which stage of broadband that you're in or you were in when you started the partnership? Let's go with Allison and Jennifer first.
Oh, certainly. So Mohawk Networks was started and founded on the basis of need. Our Mohawk community was truly the forgotten mile. Like many of our Indigenous communities, other last mile providers stopped at the edge of our territory. We had leadership well over a decade ago that sought out grants, and with a sizable co-investment from the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe, we were successful in building out our own fiber network for the southern portion of our community. It has been certainly a journey to be able to go from the build to getting to the point where we now own, operate, maintain, and partner in this space, especially as we look at other Indigenous communities and we see where we were, we see where opportunity lies, especially when you look at this through the lens of need and connectivity, and what connectivity really brings to our communities is a whole lot more than a fiber line. It changes the dynamic for education. It changes the dynamic for public health and safety. It changes the dynamic on a massive scale, has the potential on a massive scale for economic development and e-commerce opportunities. So when you look for the build out of what connectivity can do for your communities, you're really truly looking beyond the actual infrastructure, and you're talking about how you can impact people's lives, people's families, and truly looking at how you impact generations. We are at the point now that we have the ability to be able to partner and to be able to help other communities get to the point where they're truly investing in their own generational impact for their entire community and their future. And that's really the genesis of our partnership with AECON.
Great. Jennifer, I think we'll weave you into the next question as it sort of relates a little more to partners.
Sure.
Dan, can you answer that same question? Outline the nature of your partnership or plural partnerships, including at which stage of broadband you were in when the partnership was formed.
Yes. So we're in a partnership with Cherry Capital Connections, and that is a bifurcated partnership. One is project oversight for the build out of the broadband network. We're currently building basically 100 miles of fiber, and then after the project is complete and construction is done, they are the operational partner. We were awarded grants, significant grants from the USDA, and that's when the conversations began here at a leadership level to put together a team to really discuss what we were going to do with this infrastructure when it was complete. As the tribe, we did not have the capacity to operate a broadband network or the expertise, right? That was just not something we had in house. So we entered. Company team, a multidiscipline team was formed with myself and other executives in the tribe, in which case we began to put out a request and solicit for an operational partner for this project. So we had that plan before we started construction, and we are just in the beginning stages of construction, right? So this thing was built for the operating partner we were going to have after this network was constructed, right? So we wanted to have a operational asset and operational plan before we began construction on the project, and that is where we began about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and now we are in the construction phase, just pre-construction, some small construction, and next spring we're going to begin the actual heavier construction on the network. And some of the same reasons we need connectivity for our tribal buildings, telehealth, economic development, but also we're going to connect in, to the areas surrounding the initial build out, which Cherry Capital has operated networks below the bridge here in Michigan. So it was a good fit for us. Cherry Capital emerged as would be the best fit for the tribe. So that's where we are.
Well, it sounds like a good partnership, and you've worked your way right into the next couple of questions, which is great lead in. So I'm just going to close out that next section with you, and then we'll switch back to Allison and Jennifer. But so really, I mean, you've covered what made you choose to have a partnership. You got an operational partner and Cherry Capital is definitely filling the void on some of the expertise and things. And then, I guess maybe first steps into entering into the partnership, and then how does Cherry Capital align with your goals, the tribe's values and goals and sovereignty?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the first step, when we identified that we needed the expertise, it was then to basically take proposals in written form and then conduct interviews, so to say, meetings and discussions on our grant, our high level plan of what we wanted to do, and then understand what type of proposal the partner could bring back to us as far as what they felt they could do with what we had there, right? Because in our minds, we want a partnership that is where both parties are vested, right? We both need to succeed for the partnership to be successful. And through that process, Cherry Capital emerged with the most pragmatic and detailed plan on how to develop this network past what the original build out is, for our buildings into the communities. So it was basically, we were looking for the best model that had, that the tribe had benefit upside on, and that emerged to be Cherry Capital, and we've had a very good and trusting dynamic now in this partnership, and it's been a good experience thus far.
Excellent. All right, switching over to Allison and Jennifer. So Allison, I'll let you just kind of weave it together, but first, can you go through what made you choose to have a partnership, and then what were those first steps like?
Yeah, certainly. So choosing to have a partnership, I think, is that's probably a great question, because how do you get to the point where you're a standalone small company and you are faced with an opportunity, and I will call it an opportunity, to be able to partner with a large company with incredible past performance, and not only that, but an incredible commitment to working with Indigenous communities. And for us, it was a means of growth, and truly looking at this through the lens of being able to start off as consulting for other communities, frequently asked questions, as you are, Matt, frequently asked questions about how does Mohawk Networks operate, and do you have the ability to be able to help us navigate this certain problem and issue as we stand up our own broadband operation. We had limited bandwidth. We have a very small staff. We have 3 key priorities, and our priorities start with financial sustainability, talent and succession planning, and strategic growth. And for us to be able to do each of those things, we need depth, and we need really strong partnerships to be able to proceed and move forward. And AECON is extremely well aligned with our vision, as they have. I will certainly let Jennifer. She'll do a much better job of talking about the commitment to Indigenous communities, and in particular with First Nations communities throughout North America. It was something that was it was a very clear path forward for us to be able to partner with a large company who also has such a strong commitment to understanding different cultures. As you all know on this call, none of us are, we are not the same. We might all be representing Indigenous communities. It doesn't mean that we are all the same. We're all representing unique communities with unique needs, with unique people. And being able to have an extremely large company understand and work through that with nearly a dozen other First Nations communities where they've helped to build their businesses, and they've helped to be able to truly understand the cultural needs of the community from a community engagement standpoint. It was a clear decision for us to partner with AECON, and I'd really like to be able to allow Jennifer to be able to talk through their
Yeah,
approach, because I think it's very valuable for the listeners.
I want to twist that last question and ask Jennifer, what makes Mohawk Networks a good partner, and why did this work out so well?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I think that we need to understand the length of the relationship. So Allison and my colleagues and members of her team have been in discussions and building a relationship for the last 5 years. So in a past role, I worked for a very large ISP, and working on the digital divide in remote and Indigenous communities. So I believe there's that passion there, and the fact that they've, been able to accomplish what they have, in terms of what Allison identified as a small team is phenomenal. So I've been a big fan of Mohawk Networks, and understanding that they've been around for, more than 16 years. So I think that was a pretty easy, decision to want to partner, but also that we have a lot of the same values, but also, the same basically end game of basically wanting to bridge that digital divide and seeing what difficulties in terms of what Allison calls the forgotten mile, right? And I'll let her elaborate on that because that's her term. So, ACON has had a reconciliation action plan in place since 2022. And we've also had relationships and JVs with Indigenous communities, and our longest being Six Nations, ACON Six Nations, which has utility capabilities. So, and that graduation from a JV to a general partnership. So ACON Mohawk Networks is our 9th Indigenous joint venture, and having that, past relationship with other communities, but also we all, I know we're all different, but we all talk. It's such a small community, and if somebody's if an organization is doing some good work, we tend to share that, and we kind of introduce each other. So definitely, building off of those references of those other relationships with the other joint ventures, but also the communities that we have deployed fiber to. Allison was referencing Treaty 3 in Northern Ontario, which is very remote, difficult. 22 communities are very far apart from each other, but also, deploying fiber and aerial, buried, and submarine. So having that experience in working in remote communities, but realizing that we have a committed team in place to that community engagement, and also my team at ACON. Half my team lives on reserve on their reservations, and we have largely an all Indigenous team. A lot of lived experience comes with that, and the difficulties of on reserve life in terms of infrastructure development. So I think that makes a difference as well, but also those shared values, and the fact that Mohawk Networks has a lot of talent, and I'm just so enamored, the more that I get to know the team.
Can confirm. Yeah, so it's interesting. We have others call the situation last mile. A lot of Indigenous populations call it the first mile. And, it can be the forgotten mile, but it's also the bypassed mile. So we have a lot of ways to frame that, but it is relevant that it is the mile that includes the households that are on the reservations and the community itself. So let's see, I'd like to ask Tim. Tim, what strategies have you used to ensure you are respecting tribal sovereignty and decision-making authority throughout the process? I think you're muted again.
That's a good question. I'm not sure we have a formal process for doing it, but over the first few months of getting to know one another, it was clear that we shared a lot of values. Our value systems aligned very closely, or at least we found common ground. But we have always helped out smaller.
It's like Tim may have frozen. Dan, I'm going to throw it to you and say, what has gone well with your partnership with Tim and CCC?
A multitude of positives have come out of this partnership. Right, when we were awarded the grant, we really had no idea how we were going to deploy or operate it. So through this whole process, we're meeting regularly, understanding the different different aspects of managing a network and the build outs of a network. And it's been a good value is their open source, and just understanding the internet space, because you're collaborating, and then competitor will be a collaborator in the next area. And it's an interesting dynamic with this multitude of operators, as well as, well, in Michigan, you have the BEAD funding now that is going to be a large influx of capital coming into the market. So learning the more of the technical minutia behind the broadband operation. Not that I'm an expert by any way, but that understanding, because understanding its importance and significance is something that most people do, is the information that is needed to flow for commerce, also in our health industry, education, but to be able to be a part of that and to learn those processes as they're happening through the build out. And interesting, going to the boot camps through this process and seeing those type of splices and seeing the mechanics behind a network. Has been a real learning experience as far as the numbers, the projections, that those things go with any business model, but to actually to really experience that and experience that and walk through it with professionals like Cherry Capital, and they operate an open source model, which helps us in being able to collaborate and in other areas with other entities. We have a partnership with Merit, the tribe does. So this has been a real good experience understanding the networks in Michigan as they are now, and as they will be built out through the infuse of both public and private capital, and to be a part of that. It's been an amazing experience.
Excellent. Hey, Tim, Dan covered for you a bit. So I'll just go to you with the next one real quick, and then we'll switch over. Can you share any challenges or mistakes in your partnership? Lessons learned basically for folks.
Yeah, the partnership between the tribe and us, I think it's gone really smooth with very few stumbling blocks, because there was a common goal to achieve, what we want, what we're going after. Our real challenge was interfacing the tribal government with the USDA requirements. So you have two governments with sometimes opposing or conflicting needs, and that's been the biggest challenge. I think we finally have some good representation at the USDA. There's been a few changes at the USDA this year with the new administration, and we've worked through that. But that's really been the only challenge, is aligning, purchasing requirements from the Sioux tribe with what the USDA is looking for. I think Dan would agree that we're past that now, but that was the biggest challenge.
Oh, we can all fully appreciate that comment. So Allison, I'm going to take Jennifer and you back to what's gone well with the partnership. What makes it successful? How have you benefited? I mean, I think we already got some of that, how you've benefited from each other's expertise, but then also, weave in challenges as well, and maybe how you conquered them.
I don't know if you want to start, Allison.
Good to take yourself off of mute when you go to talk. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have faced is, first of all, from a business development standpoint. Again, Matt, we're small, right? You've been here. You've had
Yep.
we've hosted the Tribal Broadband Boot Camp, and I felt at the time when we hosted the Tribal Broadband Boot Camp that was a big win for our team.
It was
And
wonderful.
I feel like it was such an opportunity to be able to connect with other with other talent, right? It might have been early talent, talent in development, but being able to have the ability to be able to host people. And I think in total, we might have had somewhere between 30 and 40 people that were from all over the place, throughout the country, US, Canada. I know we had some First Nations communities represented, and yourself coming in from California, we had such an opportunity to be able to learn from each other, and that knowledge sharing is amazing. How you've been able to bridge through the Tribal Broadband Boot Camps some of that knowledge, and from a very basic level, being able to bring that knowledge back to the communities and have us geographically working together to be able to share that knowledge and continue to learn from each other is really powerful. But I also know that it's not easy, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just get put together. We worked for well over a year to be able to get our joint venture pulled together. So from an administrative perspective, I don't want to call it a heavy lift. That wouldn't be fair to the people who worked so diligently to be able to drive this forward. But it truly was getting our team onboarded to being able to understand that we've hosted the Tribal Broadband Boot Camp. It was an opportunity for our team to be able to showcase their knowledge in a very in the moment type environment, right? And now for me to be able to help them understand that this partnership is going to really change how we're able to help other communities from a depth perspective, which is something that small communities just don't have. So one of our biggest challenges is how do we get our word out there? It's been a lot of travel. I mean, I'm just been very almost clinical in my answer to you, Matt. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of education. It is a lot of connecting, and it is a lot of sharing our story about how Mohawk Networks started, how we operate, how we've struggled, the challenges we've been through, and how we've learned to overcome. And I think that therein lies kind of the beauty of that partnership as well, because we now have the ability to be able to really consult with other tribes and help them find maybe their own partnerships, help them be able to get to the point where once they're grant ready, we can come in from a community engagement perspective. We're sharing lived knowledge. Like Jennifer says, we are sharing our ability to be able to talk about the work that we've already done in other communities and how we can take that shared knowledge, learn from it, but also learn what your own community needs are to be able to help uplift that community as well. Probably a long-winded answer, Matt, but I would say that's really the crux of what we're doing, is being able to grow our own enterprise. That's really truly what it is, being able to grow our own enterprise. And we're looking for a means to be able to help other communities do the same at the same time.
Right. So Jennifer and Allison, the agreement, is that a contract? It's
Yes.
a joint venture, so you've built contracts, you have all kinds of different mechanisms in place.
Yes, it's a formal joint venture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a formal joint venture at the corporate level.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to paint that picture, because those in the audience may be interested in what mechanism makes that glue together.
No, certainly. And at that granular level, ACON is a large corporation. We are a tribally owned enterprise. So we report to a board of managers. We are our parent company is the Tribe Section 17 holding company, the Dewitt Corporation, who has a board of directors. Mohawk Networks has a board of managers. Those are layers of decision making that we're going through. Attorneys, of course, involved, and then we have the corporate side of working through this from the ACON side as well. So yes, we have a formal joint venture in place.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's Indigenous led, right? So Mohawk Networks leads it, right? So There's the difference, but also that it's a commercial joint venture. So we have other joint ventures that we don't include as commercial joint ventures, but this is a commercial. This is one of the ones that we can include as part of the 9 commercial joint ventures that we have with Indigenous communities.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that breakdown. So, so Dan and Tim, what kind of an agreement or contract or handshake goes on between your 2 organizations to make this, to manage expectations and outcomes for the future?
Well, I'll take that first, Tim. Well, what we have is a agreement. It's like I said, it's a bifurcated agreement. One would be in the construction phase as oversight and project manager for the development of the network with the funds from the funding source. And then at the point where that is complete, then there's delineation there. It goes into an operational agreement at that point, which clearly outlines roles and responsibilities, commercials as far as is how revenue and different things of that nature are handled. I think it is very important that those things are clearly defined in any agreement before moving forward. Especially, and I'm from the same logic as Allison, as we try to engage in strategic partnerships due to just expertise in industries that you're not going to pick up overnight or doing research. So if you engage in those partnerships, it's good to have clear expectations on the roles and how the commercials of those agreements will be handled, and that's fully delineated in our agreement.
Excellent. Yeah. Tim, anything to add there?
Yeah, the agreement is also can be fluid in the sense that the merit relationship and contracts that we're working out were not part of the original agreement, and we've decided to kind of separate it from the current agreement just because we don't want the USDA involved or other parties involved. And so there's a willingness that as opportunities come up for us to enter into adjusted contracts or add-on contracts. But everything does need to be laid out. What are the risks? What are the benefits? What are the opportunities that have to be addressed? It's much easier to do that up front in contract form than when it occurs 6 months, a year down the road. So,
yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's move on to funding. Woohoo, fun stuff. So funding structures such as federal grants, state programs, private investments, they definitely impact the way partnerships are formed and managed. Allison and Jennifer, can you talk a little bit about, funding structures and sort of the pursuit of those and how those are managed in your organization and your joint venture?
Sure, and I think we're going to go on a case-by-case basis based on the project, right? And if you're looking at, for example, a TBCP award versus a Reconnect award, I think it's always going to flow back to the community's needs, being able to look at the community and the network that you want, the network that you need, and then there's the network that you can afford. And I am absolutely quoting one of our colleagues in ACON when I say that. I'm giving full credit to Roger because it is something that I think that it couldn't be more accurate every time we talk about an individual community's needs. So you're going to start with the funding source. What are the requirements? But on the community engagement level, what are the requirements of the community? What are your long-term needs? Because what your community needs today might not necessarily be what the demand is going to look like in 5 or 10 years from now. And that has to be considered. I will say that we are the lived knowledge. Yeah. We have been through this, and Matt, you've been here. I've been pretty forthcoming with some of the challenges that we've had as a provider. We, at the time, built a network that we could afford. And during the pandemic, the word that nobody ever likes to even hear because it makes everybody shudder. During the pandemic, approaching the time period before the pandemic, we knew that parts of our network were aging. But wow, did it ever hit us in the face hard the day that the pandemic hit. So while we were planning to upgrade equipment as we could afford to do so, we were faced with an immediate need to completely rebuild our core network. So we have done so, and to be able to do so in the midst of a pandemic, while everyone is working remotely and going to school virtually and the world is closed, is something that, first of all, I don't ever want to have to live through again, but it is certainly lived knowledge that we will take into any community when we're identifying what those community needs really look like. And I think every time that you look at what we're well past understanding that the Internet of Things is coming. The Internet of Things is just everybody's way of life now if you've got access to broadband. But for us to be able to now think about how AI is being factored into workflows, how AI is being factored into e-commerce and businesses, and I think schools are probably just starting to scratch the surface. Those demands, those network demands are going to be far different than they were when these grants were written.
Excellent. Jennifer, anything more to add to that one?
Yeah, I think, we've had discussions with communities where we've heard horror stories of consultants coming in and giving them, a desktop design and, here you go. And then realizing when it's time for deployment that it's not reasonable, but also, it's not something that the community needs, like what Allison said, when we have discussions like that. So I think it's important for communities to bring, folks like us to the table who do have that experience, but also, making sure that there's ground truthing in terms of those designs. So there can be, it can get to deployment. So I think that's an important discussion to have as well.
Just need to contract with a verifier at some point to make sure the person that you're working with, is providing what they say they're providing. The worst scenario that I've seen is when somebody comes in with a network design for your community and they've not talked to you yet, but they've already got your network design for you, as if they understand any of the needs that your community has. So let's ask Tim and Dan that same sort of structures around federal grants, state programs, investments. How does that impact your partnership and management? Obviously, we heard a little bit about USDA and aligning the tribe with that. And so talk a little bit about future, like chasing dollars in your future.
Okay. I'll go ahead and lead on that one, Tim. So a general strategy by the tribe is to use grants and programs in a hybrid to bring a project to fruition. Just like broadband alone, that private capital doesn't make sense in a model in the UP, right? It's just not dense enough population. Your return on capital would be decades, and that's if you took a large portion of the market. So with the infusion of capital via public funding sources, this allows the tribe to enter and others, it's not just a tribe, to enter into sectors and to bring communications, which is it's needed in all aspects of life with the Internet of Things. And it's not important just to understand what's here today, but to see that market in 5-10 years and build what you can with positive economics, what's feasible now, but also to, when possible, try to leave latitude in agreements and in technologies to expand that whatever that backbone, that base of operations is, to meet future demand and scalability. Right. As far as specific to funding sources, the Sioux tribe is very experienced with a multitude of funding sources, federal, state levels, and through that, that's one of the values we can bring to partnerships is we can access various programs and use that in a hybrid with a private partner like Tim, a small business owner. And we have similar relationships with local cooperative for energy, who are using their poles in this agreement, who we've worked on some energy projects. None of them come to fruition yet. As Allison mentioned, AI is going to be a major factor in broadband and energy, and in seeing where that is in the coming years should be is always something to consider. As far as interactions with the funding source, where we found a learning experience with our current funding source, the USDA, who we were awarded these grants in a significant amount, but where we were bringing Tim at Cherry Capital's structure to a project under a small business model for efficiency, and that Tim can add or correct anything here, and work with mostly fixed bid grants that were progress based into a different funding source, which is got more process driven, right? A lot more process. So that did slow the project down initially, but again, just through collaboration and working with the funding source, working with Cherry Capital, working with our own internal teams, adjustments were made, and I believe that they were it was a learning experience, and we're definitely through those adjustments and looking to access. And then if you have a partner and they can access capital through a grant or a funding source as well, then you want to try to bring all these, we'll call hybrid of capital and public funding together to maximize your output, your product.
Excellent. Tim, anything to add on to that, or are you?
Yeah, so in our agreement, we upfront made a commitment that we would build off of the federally funded network that's going to be built, and created a revenue sharing model associated with our private investment that benefits from what the Sioux Tribe won. When we went into the BEAD application and the short time frame and kind of the invasive questions associated with BEAD, it was decided that we would apply in those areas that touched the Sioux Tribe's network and add that to the model of revenue sharing. So I think it's important, as Dan said, that your partner have a skin in the game, that both have areas of risk and benefit, which keeps things, I think, a much cleaner and fair conversation. So.
Well, that you just segued right into what I was going to ask. We had an impromptu question, which is the value of sustainability, right? And you just alluded that moving off of the tribal trust land and into the communities that perhaps could generate revenue stream that would that would support the network's growth and sustainability, et cetera. I mean, that's exactly where I was headed. So I'll switch over to Allison and Jennifer, and I mean, as I remember it, Allison, it really was an opportunity to grow Mohawk Networks to be able to support other tribal communities, but also, develop a sustainability and future for both Mohawk Networks on your reservation and then others as well.
It really, I mean, you probably summarized it better than I could. From a revenue diversification standpoint, many of our communities, if you're looking through the lens of delivering broadband, we have so many homes, right? We have so many homes passed. We have so many small businesses. We have so many anchor institutions to support. But what we don't have is booming communities around us to be able to grow and compete with those large providers. So for Mohawk Networks, from a long-term financial sustainability lens, we needed to diversify. And we needed to diversify if we were going to grow. And how we diversified is we took a couple of different approaches. First of all, I'm going to get slightly off topic from our broadband discussion and talk about what we did. Is we took our own past performance in the telecom space. We do a lot of work with small businesses. We do structured cabling. We do security cameras and access control. We do a lot of telecom work that is outside of purely delivering high-speed internet. We took that experience and we became a tribal 8A entity as well. So from a revenue diversification standpoint, we're looking at a means of being able to grow our own employees. And from a talent and succession perspective, we want to be able to have career paths for our employees. We have highly skilled technicians that, a decade ago were skilled technicians, and now they've got different certifications and the ability to be able to work on all different types of projects right now because of the experience that they bring to the table. So there was no question in my mind that we were primed to be able to do work off territory and to be able to do, we do work for our own tribal government. There's no reason that we can't do the same type of work in the government sector. So that is definitely one means of diversification, but also being able to be able to look at a partnership to be able to do this work with other Indigenous communities, which really kind of also tugs at the heartstrings. It's the right thing to do, and it's also in at our core. It is how we grew, and it is how we'd like to be able to see other communities be able to grow as well. And if we have a seat at the table to be able to help other communities develop their own infrastructure, what an amazing way to come to work every day.
Go ahead and
I know that our partners also bring quite a bit to the table. And you were talking about funding sources, and I think one of the things that we can bring to any community when we're talking about funding, and grants only cover so much. The ACON team has a concessions team that does some pretty phenomenal work. I know Jennifer can probably elaborate just a bit on that.
Sure. So thank you, Allison. So we have 5 business lines across our businesses. So we have utilities, civil, we do nuclear and industrial, and we also have a concessions team. So we have a team that focuses solely on finding money for projects, is what they do. For example, we built an airport where ACON is part owner because our concessions team had raised some money specifically for that project. So we have a focus on renewable energy projects, but also, we've got folks from our concessions team coming with us when we do go to the different conferences where we have booths and everything. So, and actively having conversations with tribes around that. Like Allison said, there's only so much, so far grants can take you, especially in today's climate. So I think it's, looking for other funding sources is important, and to actually get the project finished, because I know that there are some projects that were mid-deployment and are, we're unsure of where the next year was going to take them. So I think that, we can definitely have some conversations.
Jennifer, while I've got you, what communication practices have been most effective in your partnership? Managing expectations is one of the biggest stumbling blocks, I think, in working with outside sources for tribes, and not, and not knowing what the next step is, or not being in full communication, and it can really screw up a timeline of a project. It can also, mess up a project to the point where it can't actually be finished. So what's the good practices, check-ins, reporting, project management tools, maybe just for the audience, so that they have a better understanding of how you manage this?
Yeah, so the beauty of working with Allison's team is they understand project management. So we have, weekly meetings with the team, weekly check-ins. We include business development as part of that, but also, where are we going in the next 30, 60, 90 days, and strategic planning. Since earlier there was a question on what are the kind of humps that we're kind of working through, and a lot of it is time, right? With any kind of startup, and we're viewing this JV as a startup, a lot of time it has to go into it. So we're also competing with operations, right? Allison's team is competing with operations, and our team, same thing. So trying to find the time. But we do manage to meet every week, and we have a connection, and then we do have planned, activities. If we do go and speak at conferences, we support each other, and basically telling that story, right? The storytelling piece is quite important, and also bringing in, we brought in folks from A6 and our general partnership now to kind of tell that story as well, because we find that a lot of tribes want to hear right from another tribe, right? I can't tell the story as well as Allison can, or as well as Dave from my team now. So he came from Aecon Six Nations. So I think that's really important, and having that, those project management tools, and making sure that we're well aligned on where we're going and where we are. Excellent. And what our limitations are, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the primary goal of the boot camps, is to get folks together to verify things and share experiences, and that's what we're trying to do here in the virtual series. So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to switch over to Dan. Last question before we start the wrap up. How is your communications with Cherry Capital, and what tools do you have in place to manage that?
Well, we have weekly meetings, communicate email, calls throughout the week as necessary. For project flow, we have a Gantt chart with benchmarks, milestones. So I manage a multitude of projects through the enterprises. They have built networks. So we structure the project via documentation, regular meetings weekly if needed, throughout the week, additional meetings if it's a funding source meeting, and making sure that we have all the necessary parties in the room for questions, so we're all on the same page moving forward. So we have a very free flow of information. That's always paramount in any business, any dynamic, is that people are communicating actively, listening, because that's how you generate positive outcomes, where everyone's involved in the that needs to be involved in decisions, and that helps progress the project forward.
In that relationship, Tim and Dan, any advice on coaching upward when you're engaging your tribal council? That kind of communication path is often the difficult one. I mean, I can see you, Dan, and Tim get along, and the two working entities function very easily, but educating and bringing that information up to tribal council might be a whole different animal. Any advice there for folks?
Yeah, I definitely would say to be transparent and explain. Obviously, you can't go into details. It becomes a function of time. You can't pass every detail of your operation to council. But through this process, we were very, I report directly to the board. I have monthly updates, keep that in the monthly updates. When we were going through the process of selecting a partner, we kept leadership apprised of that process. And then when we had selected the partner, Tim has come on that occasion and other occasions with his team to go over the model and what we believed, what this model would look like through the construction, and then as did the build out further. So yeah, communication, continuous communication throughout the process. I think with council, taking questions is going to be an effective way to ensure a project's success, and then we've been able to accomplish that.
Excellent. So I'm going to switch back over to Jennifer and Allison. Jennifer, you wanted to add a little bit?
I did. I was remiss to talk about the community engagement piece. So we are in community as well. So we make sure that we're present at the community events. And I think it's not just the formal relationship, but also that team building piece is quite important. We've had quite a few team building activities as part of building strategy. And I think getting to know people in the community, and people in the community getting to know Aecon is quite important. And we're not just kind of in and out when it suits us for business.
No, you're absolutely familiar then, and that makes it probably way easier with Allison's work with her multitude of boards of approval. Go ahead and kind of line that out for us, Allison, and any advice.
No, I'm really glad that Jennifer brought that up, because I was thinking about how do I weave this in. So thank you, Jennifer, because that is one of the most important commitments. I don't even want to say engagements, but commitments. For example, we had our community has a cultural tourism that has grown out of years and years of planning, and we have an amazing art market, the Akwesasne Art Market, that is held annually in the summertime. This summer, I think it was the hottest day of the year, perhaps, or at least it felt like it was the hottest day. The ACON team came down from Toronto, it is not close. It's in traffic. I would imagine that they probably spent at least 6 hours traveling here, spending the night with their families. So this was not necessarily a Monday through Friday. This was a come in on Friday night and participate in the art market, spend money at our art market, being able to speak with our local artisans and just a very genuine place, participating in our community events. I will speak for Jennifer, who brought her grandson, who it truly was one of the hottest days of the year. And, she brought her daughter and her grandson. The senior vice president brought his wife. And these are things that I think you just don't always see in partnerships. I sit on the board of the Akwesasne Boys and Girls Club. One of those things that just couldn't be more important, right? Taking care of the kids. ACON is a sponsor. They've sponsored our art market. They've sponsored multiple community events. You just don't get to see that in every single partnership. It's key, and it's true commitment.
Absolutely. So we're going to close this out with, if you could give tribes and partners just one piece of advice to carry forward into future collaborations, what would it be? And I'm going to start with Tim.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. If you could give tribes and partners just one piece of advice to carry forward for partnerships and collaborations, what would that be?
So as the one trying to be invited in, is on my side is to listen. A lot of times you go into a meeting with preconceived ideas of what is, and that usually leads to failure. So as an outsider from the community, I would advise to just keep an open mind and listen to what's being said.
Brilliant advice. Let's switch to Jennifer.
I would say be prepared to put a lot of time, to make a lot of time for that relationship building piece. And it's not going to happen overnight. I know a lot of industry folks go in and they ask, can I get a letter of recommendation after, meeting somebody for the first time? So, and that doesn't build trust. So building that trust and, going into a community, not having any expectations, just to get to know folks and be present, be supportive of, community events. But, really take the time to want to build a real relationship with communities, with tribes, and be present. So I think that's important.
Excellent. Let's switch back to Dan. One piece of advice.
Yeah, in a partnership, ensure there's common goals and values there, and both parties are vested in the success of that partnership, meaning both parties have to be successful for there to be success, right? And then to the goals and values in that outcome that both parties need to be successful for that outcome to happen, I think is the starting point. And then, communication and getting to know those things throughout the process are always continuous. But those things at the base level when you start out with a partner.
Excellent. And Allison, close this out.
I mean, exactly what everybody said. And it takes time to build trust. It takes time to do engagement, and it takes commitment to communicate. And all of those things weave together. Go for some small wins. If you go for some small wins, you're going to be able to figure out how you work together and how well you work together. And building trust takes time. Tim, thank you for saying listening. That's probably the most important, listening and being able to understand what those community needs are, and going in with an understanding that there is going to be a learning curve for everyone.
Yeah, managing expectations and everything that everybody said it's a good checklist on how to behave properly and how to make a successful story out of this. So I'd like to thank our participants today, Allison Mitchell, Tim Malone, Jennifer Campo, and Dan Doyle. This is the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp virtual series brought to you by Waskaweewin, and I'd like to thank Jordan and Angelina and Chris and Jess for putting this together. So we appreciate your time today, and we hope everybody gets something out of this. So thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.